It often comes from those we trust, even love. But that is no excuse. Violence and abuse tonight on Call with the Prairie Doc. Good evening and welcome to On Call with the Prairie Doc. Tonight our topic is abuse, which is any action to intentionally harm another. There is drug and alcohol abuse, which we've dealt with earlier and we'll deal with later in another show. The American Psychiatric Association defines domestic violence and abuse as control by one person over another in any relationship. Control is the operative word. Another definition is inappropriate use of power or control of another, which diminishes the dignity and the healthy development of another. Abuse comes in a number of forms like verbal abuse, physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, children's abuse, elders' abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and isolation. We'll take your questions and discussion why it happens and what we can do about it. But first, let's take a look at this week's Prairie Doc quiz question. If I witness physical violence of a child while I'm in a convenience store, I should A, tell the store manager, B, ignore it, it's none of my business, or C, call the police department. Viewers who call in the correct answer will be entered into a drawing to win a signed copy of our book, The Picture of Health. Each of my essays, originally written for this show, comes with a wonderful accompanying photograph by Dr. Judith Peterson. We'll announce the answer and the winner at the end of the show. Remember, you only have 10 minutes to get your answer in. But we answer your questions about abuse and violence or comments as they are called in or sent to us via Facebook or email. Please call in your questions to 1-888-376-6225 or send us an email to the address on the screen. Joining us tonight are Dr. Matthew Stanley with Avera Medical Group, University Psychiatry Associates, Sioux Falls, who's joining us via Skype because they closed those interstates this snowy, wintry South Dakota evening. And also Dr. Axton Betz-Hamilton with South Dakota State University's Department of Consumer Science. She's a member of the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
And Matt, appreciate you you're not freezing to death on your way up. I thought for sure you were going to try to make it a run for it, but the roads are closed.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. Actually, Rick, I appreciate the opportunity to participate from home, safe and warm, although I have to tell you that I really miss seeing you and the crew, and so you'll have to do something to make that up to me.
Okay, I will. I promise you. And Axton, that's a very interesting name, Axton. Can I ask you from whence the word Axton comes? I've not heard that name before.
Sure. So when my mom was about 8.5 months pregnant with me, my parents were watching Dallas one night, so that should tell you my rough age, right? And there was a character named Afton.
Afton.
And my dad didn't like the F sound, and he just blurted out, Axton. And my mom decided, oh, that sounds okay, and Axton it was.
So, great name. My grandmother's name was Axie Powell, which I thought was a beautiful name, and I thought people call you Axie, but they don't, do they?
No.
That's not your name.
No.
You are a PhD in consumer advocacy. Tell us a little bit more about what got you into that.
Well, actually, violence and abuse got me into my career in my field of study, as I have been a victim of identity theft. And ultimately, long story short, my mother was the one who stole my identity. And not only did she steal my identity, she stole my father's identity, and she stole my grandfather's identity. So it would be her father-in-law's identity as well.
And what was she doing with the identity? I mean, what can you do having stolen an identity?
Well, what my mother primarily did was she obtained credit cards in each of our names and ran those cards well above the limit and didn't pay them. And she took out, I should say, established bank accounts in my dad's name, and had some fraudulent investments and some tax issues related to identity theft as well.
So that was, and how old were you when you discovered this?
Well, we knew that my parents' identities had been stolen when I was 11, but that wasn't true. That was a story that my mom created to hide the fact that she was the perpetrator. But my dad's identity for sure was stolen when I was 11, and I didn't learn my identity had been stolen until I was 19. And I tried to establish electric service at my first apartment, and they said, sure, but we need a $100 deposit due to your credit score. And I thought it was because I didn't have one. And come to find out, I sure did have one, because my credit report was 10 pages long and full of fraudulent credit card entries and associated collection agency entries dating all the way back to when my dad's identity had been stolen.
So how do you get out of that? I'm gonna usurp your presence for a little while, Matt, sorry. But how do you get out of this kind of a dilemma? I mean, how do you ever get a credit score again, for example, or get out from underneath a debt that you didn't make?
Excellent question. So one of the things that you can do now as a result of the establishment of a website called annualcreditreport.com, you can access each of your credit reports. So you'll have a credit report from Experian, one from Equifax, and one from TransUnion. So those are our three major credit reporting agencies in the United States. You can go to that website.
What is it again?
Annualcreditreport.com.
Okay. And
you can through that website you can dispute fraudulent accounts, incorrect information. So maybe there's a misspelling of your name on your credit report. You can dispute that, and through that process, you can usually get some of those accounts removed from your credit report. That was one thing that was somewhat successful for me, but it was still a challenge. And
yes.
You mentioned, how do you rebuild your credit? How do you recover from this? I was doing things such as disputing those fraudulent credit entries on my credit report while trying to build good credit. Well, when you have a credit score of 380, as I did when I was 19, and that was in the second percentile of all credit scores in the nation, any credit you obtain is going to be subprime. And my first credit card had a 29.99% APR. It had a $69 annual limit that was assessed with the first billing cycle, which actually came before the card arrived in the mail to even activate. And you could
hardly use it.
Right, I could hardly use it, and I just slowly, over time, was able to rebuild my credit. And some of those fraudulent entries that remained on my credit report, despite my efforts to get them removed, those fell off after 7 years of the date of last activity on the original account. So some of them dropped off from age. Some of it was my efforts, and then, of course, just, taking that hard plunge of having to get a credit card with 29% interest.
Yes, and so, and finish it off, your mom's was having some mental illness problems, is what my guess would be.
We definitely think there was a personality disorder involved, probably antisocial personality disorder, particularly psychopathy or sociopathy, depending on what was really the root cause. But one thing about my mother, she's passed away now. She passed away before we discovered that she was the perpetrator. Wow. We actually discovered it 13 days after she passed away. There were never any signs of guilt. As she lay on her deathbed, there was no indication, no apology, no indication that anything was amiss.
Did she have history when she was a child or anything like that would give you a clue?
No,
Nothing.
no. I mean, if anything, looking at the family histories, my dad was more in the position to do things that were illegal just based on some of his upbringing, and
he wasn't.
No. Dad is very much an upstanding citizen,
yeah.
And I hope he's watching this. So he hears that.
Matt, what's your response to people within the family that might be taking advantage of other family members?
Well, I think as Axton said, it's not that uncommon. Even when we talk about violence and abuse, as we will be talking about, Rick, far more common to happen within the family or to be someone you know very well than to be a stranger. So the story is interesting as is, and I think we could talk to Axton all evening. It's probably not that unusual as she introduced us to the topic.
You know, financial abuse is one other way. I mean, we can talk about child abuse, and I think we should, and we should talk about which is usually a husband over a woman, physical abuse, and we should. But financial abuse, particularly of the elderly, is a real deal. And I would start with you, Matt, and then I'm going to go back to Axton. Matt, you have any comment about financial abuse and of the elderly and this whole topic?
You know, in my experience, we see it maybe more commonly than the physical abuse or the neglect of the elderly. However, even when it's found, it's very difficult to intervene, and oftentimes it's the person that the elderly depend on. So they're not even interested in being defended against their abuser. So it creates a very complicated intervention, and I think without the cooperation of the person being abused, it's a difficult trail to track down. So I think it's very difficult for us as caregivers and as maybe friends or extended family to know how to intervene in a lot of those situations.
Yeah. Take it from there, Axton. Any other comments about it? I mean, how can, and my point has always been, as I've addressed this, empower yourself, escape, find a way out, call the police, call for social services, call for help. Don't let people abuse you. Don't let it happen. But I think, as Matt points out, oftentimes people who are caught under that particular suppression, sometimes it's been so long that they can't get out of it, or they're so afraid that they're caught.
Right, and in my research on elder financial exploitation within families, oftentimes that elder who is being abused, they have dementia or Alzheimer's or some other health issue where there's a cognitive decline, and they may not have the capacity to realize that they're being abused. And what happens in those cases is that there's another family member that thinks, something's not right here, you know, mom or dad isn't being cared for in the way they should be, and they should be able to afford, the care that they're not getting. What's going on? And that's usually kind of, that string that pulls down the dirty curtain, so to speak.
Pulls down the dirty curtain.
Yes.
Fraudsters tend to target the senior population for a variety of reasons. Sometimes these criminals are strangers, but they also can be family members.
When we're talking about elder abuse, there's many different forms of elder abuse. A lot of people are going to think of physical, so there's sexual, there's neglect, and then there's also abandonment, where sometimes financial abuse or someone taking advantage of another occurs. Oftentimes it can occur by a family member, someone that's closest to that adult, and where they're taking advantage of finances and what's going on with their personal life. But we also have strangers that will make attempts, whether it's by the internet or even phone fraud, where they're contacting this individual. It's happening every week. I'm getting a phone call at least once or twice a week. And so I think they're trying anything and everything now to reach out to people. And even out of 100 attempts, if they get one attempt that's successful, and then they keep going back to that same person. It's just like all of a sudden they get on a list, and now that person is constantly being harangued for more money. When you compare elder abuse to, say, domestic violence, we're still probably decades behind. We've done so much better in the area of domestic violence because of education, and people are becoming more and more aware. And I think we've done a terrific job here in our community. But elder abuse is still falling behind, and it's becoming more and more prevalent because people that are my age, who are now in the retirement area, and I'm a baby boomer, there's more of us. So there's going to be more opportunities for those to take advantage of us. Fortunately, elder abuse in institutions and in nursing homes is rare because they have so many safeguards built in. We still have that once in a while. There'll be some theft that's involved, sometimes physical, sometimes even sexual abuse, if we've watched the news lately. And the best thing that we can do is to stay involved. Stay involved with our loved ones that are in a nursing unit, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to show up unannounced, especially at times when you might think that there's something going on. Don't be afraid to talk to them. You know, the elderly are at risk for a lot of reasons. Dementia can be a huge factor because you don't know what's true and untrue. Just low social support, if you don't have a family member nearby, then you're dependent upon the professionals to protect your elderly loved one.
Thank you, Jeff Miller. Retired chief of police has a deep wisdom and a history of seeing the abuse. He did comment about nursing homes. I would say that the nursing homes in this arena, in this area near Brookings, are, as far as I can tell, fabulous nursing homes. I have seen every effort made in such institutions to make absolutely sure that no abuse is occurring. Mm-hmm. And I think the government has safeguards. Do you both agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, Rick, I would agree. Nursing homes are highly regulated now, and I think there's been a lot of efforts to reduce that. I will say that it's difficult to provide care for the elderly and the demented, and those are oftentimes kind of low-paying, highly physical jobs. And I think any of us can get frustrated under certain circumstances, so that need for supervision and regulation is important. But I think the state and the federal CMS does a good job, as well as they can. And I think physicians and families are far more aware than they were just a few years ago.
I do want to make the point that we need your phone calls. Please give us a call at the number we've mentioned before at 1-888-376-6225. We need your feedback. Give us your story. Give us your questions. We know you're out there. And so this is an important topic. It's kind of a touchy topic. I know that people are reluctant to talk out about it, but let's go there. So that's interesting. I didn't know that there was one place that you could go that would really start you going, and that's the annualcreditreport.com. That's an important bit of information. Mm-hmm. So there's you talked about credit card fraud as one thing within families, but there's a lot of other phone call fraud that go on. Could you tell us more?
Sure, and this is something that actually happened within my family recently as well. Had a family member receive a text message from Apple saying that their iPhone login and password had been compromised, and please click this link to reset it. And of course, my family member, being panicked, thought, I don't want anybody hacking into my iPhone.
They gave it away.
And they gave it away, and then had to call Apple and have the login and password reset. So over text messages, what is known as phishing can occur. So Phishing can occur over email, text message, basically any way electronically that we get information, you can be phished. And phishing occurs when someone poses as a legitimate entity that you do business with, such as a bank or Apple or
the government.
Right, the government, and they appeal to your emotions and say, hey, there's a problem, you need to fix this right now, and encourage you to click on a link within their message. And that's the kicker. It will take you to another website, usually very sophisticated, looks exactly like the business or government agency's website. So, you think you're entering your information on the right site, and you're giving the information away to the fraudster. So when in doubt, contact the business or agency that you think sent you that email, just to make sure that they indeed did do so.
Yeah, hang up or close off.
Right.
Get off of that and don't go there.
Right.
I think they will. We can all fall for it. I've fallen for that. Here's the phone calls that say, "Hi, Grandma, I'm your. Who do you think this is?" And of course, what is it, Billy? And then suddenly, yes, he's got your name. Of your grandson, and then plays the grandson role. Don't call my mom and dad, please. I'm caught in jail and I need X amount of money.
Right.
There's all these kinds of phone calls. Let's just take a lighter one. What about people calling for donations for the veterans or for police officers or for? How do you feel? I mean, of course, we all feel important that we need to support veterans, or we need to support police officers, or we need to support other organizations. I think those are inappropriate. I've talked to police officer organizations. They say, go locally. Don't send it to a national.
Right.
And also, I've heard government never calls you. The government will never call you.
Right. They'll send you letters in the mail, but
Yes.
they will never call you.
Yes. So now let's switch a little bit from financial fraud to physical abuse. And let's start with marital abuse. Matt, what are important lessons that people need to know about physical and emotional abuse within spouses?
Well, Rick, I know you've seen it a lot in your practice as physicians, and particularly in psychiatry, you get exposed to it quite a bit. One of the things that's difficult is we don't have good estimates of how common it is. For I think the same reasons Axton was referencing, that people don't want to come forward, they don't want to acknowledge it's occurring. We usually aren't aware until a crisis occurs, but we do know some things that are signs or periods of time where people are more at risk. And one of those, unfortunately, is during pregnancy. There's estimates that pregnant women are abused as high as 25% of the pregnant population. We know that people who have been abused in their childhood are far more frequently abusers in marital situations or in relationships in general. We also know that frequently women who are dependent or have a history of abuse themselves seem to have an attraction or seem to go through multiple abusive relationships. So I think that as providers and supportive individuals, we just have to have a high level of awareness and try to offer a helping hand or support whenever we become aware this is occurring.
Right. People are reluctant to speak out or to come forward. One person sent us an email that said, victims of sexual abuse from when she was a teenager, just recently realized it was a sexual assault due to and that she didn't realize it because she had a repressed memory. What tips do you have about helping people bring back the memories? I mean, that same story about priests abusing altar boys, and same story about older men abusing boys, and the boys don't remember it until they become older. How often does that happen, and what can you do to help with that?
Well, I think when you recognize as an individual, or if you're a provider caring for someone, and they describe a lot of resistance or fear in certain situations or of certain individuals. With women, you'll sometimes see physical symptoms, comfort with sexual encounters. They can even have physical symptoms like vaginal spasms during intercourse, or they just really have no attraction or ability for intimacy. I think those kind of signs elevate your concern that there's been a history of abuse. But this is such a touchy subject, Rick, because if you try too hard to recover a memory that may or may not be there, there is such a thing as false memory syndrome, where you really encourage someone to recall something, and they do generate memories. It's just that they may not be accurate. So I think that both the patient and the clinician have to address this with caution, and repressed memories really is maybe best handled by someone who has a history of working with people who've been abused or have a history of post-traumatic stress.
I know that there's a lot said about memories where, and this work has been with the police and with the court system, as people say, well, okay, now how do you describe what happened when, well, he came in with a gun and he did this, and somebody fell and there was this noise and so on and so forth. And, you know, they're turning around that one particular comment, and the more times you repeat the story, the more it becomes it isn't the correct answer. You know, video cameras have shown that that wasn't even close, but once you say it, it becomes the truth in your memory banks. And so we've got to be very careful about our own memories. Not to say that you don't come back with remembering things that did happen later on that you've suppressed. Tough issue. It
is, and I think that's why you have to look for skilled clinicians in this area, and I think that's why police and even emergency rooms have individuals really trained to address things like physical or sexual trauma.
We have a comment. A mother was sending money to an organization that was scam, would find multiple letters from company asking for money. Just another way the elderly experience financial abuse. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. Any comment, Axton?
Well, that's certainly something that happens quite a bit because elders typically are more lonely than younger folks, and writing a check to a charitable organization, whether it's a legitimate organization or a fraudulent one, that it makes that elder feel like they're doing something good, and there's interaction there. You know, yeah. They're writing a check to someone that they feel will be receiving a benefit from that. So there's a definite psychological component driving that behavior.
Yeah, I do know that phone scams are frequent and real. I mean, there was a phone call from somebody who had, actually it started with an email. It sent out to, they got a hold of my email list, which is pretty big, and said, friends, I'm caught in France, and I don't have money to get back, and you know, I just need $1,000. I'll pay you back when I get back. I'll be back next week. If I can just get this quick loan, you just need to send it to this account. And I wasn't in France. And a number of them called me and said, "Are you in France?" And I said, "No." Oh, whew, wow. And a number of them almost sent the money.
Yep.
I have a nephew whose son is physically abusing him, but the mother is enabling the nephew's son's significant abuse. They feel like they need to keep it a secret. How can I encourage them to confront the abuse and do something to stop it? Matt?
Well, Rick, I think you kind of covered this in your book as well. I think both the abused and the abuser here would benefit from the help. You know, being an abuser isn't a reflection of a healthy individual. So I would clearly think there's help there for the nephew as well that's needed, whether there's a mental illness or something else that's driving that behavior.
Well, let me ask you that. You know, I have always thought that that abuse was a consequence of having been abused. And I do know that if you were abused as a child, 1/3 of those people will go on to become an abuser, and 2/3 will not. 2/3 will not, which is the important thing to remember, but 1/3 will. That's called repetition compulsion, and I thought that was the main motivator. But there's a lot of motivators that that I think that we don't recognize. One being true depression, and it manifests itself in anger, that physically manifests itself in a strike by a man against a woman, usually. Matt, any comment about that?
Well, I think, as you said, Rick, it's a little more complex than just having a history of abuse yourself. And there are factors that are more likely to lead to aggression. Frustration and aggression are highly correlated. And we are also still, in terms of aggression, somewhat slaves to our genetic history as well.
Yeah. One particular writer said that the major male abuser was a child, was raised in a family that smothered him with love and never told him that you've got to move on and that you have to realize you didn't do well here. It was always, "You're really a great kid. You're really a great kid." When the teacher said, you're not being a great kid," they would intervene. And now they're the ones who are the biggest recipient of his anger, his frustration, his abuse. And it's, they say that you need two components being raised. One is unconditional love, and the other is, these are the rules by which we play. Any other comment about that, Axton?
Well, one thing I'd like to add about causes of abuse.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've been talking a little bit about that, but one thing we haven't touched on is financial stress. Financial stress can be a major trigger for physical abuse, neglect, emotional abuse, I mean, really all forms of abuse. Financial stress can be what pulls the trigger for that.
We're going to drop that for now and go right to this comment that domestic abuse should never be tolerated, regardless of the victim's age. But the fact is, it can happen to anyone.
Since I've been here, the youngest person that has come here for her own safety was 17, and a mother herself. That can get tricky for us if they're minors. And then I think the oldest person, gosh, 70 maybe, just to give a ballpark there. But domestic abuse really doesn't discriminate on any demographics. And so that's one thing when we do our community presentations that we really try and drive home, is that it can happen to anybody. We also serve males. We can't house males in the same facility as our female clients, but we will find them shelter if they are in need of shelter. Domestic abuse is about power and control. So it doesn't necessarily need to be physical abuse. There's emotional abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse. Oftentimes, those are kind of precursors to physical violence. However, we like to tell people, just look for the power and control, financial control, controlling who you're with, if you can work, if you can go to the store by yourself, little things like that. Early on in a relationship, some of those things can often be seen as, oh, this person really likes me a lot. They just want to know where I am all the time, don't want to be without me. But usually those are kind of red flags. If you see a change in your friend or family member, usually self-esteem is affected a lot, and so you might see them not taking interest in spending time with you anymore or doing things that they used to do. Appearance could change. It can really take a big toll on physical health as well. So those would be, really careful things to look at. And then just, listening to the little things they say. It's often minimized by even the victim because they're led to feel like it's their fault or they somehow deserve it. Even just saying, I believe you, I'm here for you, can go a long way. The Walk a Mile in Her Shoes is a fundraiser that we do, and that's to stand in support of survivors of sexual assault. So we serve victims of sexual assault, stalking, and domestic abuse. We do a few other fundraisers. The community supports us so well. We are so lucky to have such a supportive community.
Thank you so much. We just had another question. What is the difference between psychological, emotional, and verbal abuse? Matt?
Yeah, good question. Psychological abuse is often part and parcel of physical abuse, and that is often the destruction of an individual's self-esteem and confidence. Verbal abuse, I think we're somewhat familiar with. That's the assaulting of an individual verbally, slurs, it could be all kinds of derogatory comments. And emotional abuse is a little more complex, maybe. It's the use of affection or the withdrawal of that to manipulate a person's emotions and to manipulate a relationship. So that's kind of a very superficial overview of what I would say are the differences of those three types of abuse. Of course, like most syndromes we see, they don't necessarily occur in their purest forms. In other words, physical abuse, verbal abuse, and emotional abuse might all be used by a perpetrator.
I wrote an essay on a broken bone and how it heals in about 6 weeks. You get 90% of its strength in 6 weeks as that broken bone kind of mends, maybe a little longer if you're older. Mm-hmm. But, and I was thinking about emotional abuse. Sometimes that never goes away. It's a lot easier to mend a bone than it is to mend a broken heart, an emotional pain that we've had because somebody was mean to us in a different way. And I was kind of thinking about that, and I was talking with our youngest son, Preston, and I said, Preston, what do you think is worse, physical abuse or emotional abuse? And his answer was, well, Dad, they're both equal because when you got physical abuse, you've also got emotional abuse. I mean, it affects you emotionally. Mm-hmm. They go together. Mm-hmm. If you're doing just emotional abuse, you don't lay a hand on it, that's just about as harsh. And if you look at it, my comment or my question to the two of you is, when we come down to non-physical abuse, does one sex have it over the other? Matt, I'd ask you that. That's it.
Yeah, well, thanks for throwing me the softball, Rick. I would say that you know, again, the studies would indicate that physical abuse clearly is more men in adult relationships, appears to be more women in physical child abuse cases. But in marriages, I'm not sure the data is very clear, but it appears that the emotional abuse is relatively equal between sexes.
Yep. Any comments about that, Axton?
Well, I would echo those comments with regard to financial abuse. What we're learning, particularly with victims of elder financial abuse, is that it's really it depends on the study you read. Some studies say it's more likely to occur in men. Some say that women are more likely to be victims. Likely, realistically speaking, women are more likely to be victims because they generally outlive men. So there's a longer...
They get older.
Right, there's a longer time frame there that they can be abused.
How about the perpetrator?
Perpetrator, that's a pretty even split.
An even split.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got some questions. Our question places have been challenging. What steps should I take if I have a family member that is being financially abused by a caretaker?
By a caretaker. So...
Fire them.
Well, that's step one. I was jumping a little ahead there, but yeah, definitely. And also file a police report, whether that be with your local police department, your sheriff's department, and also make a report with Human Services as well.
Social Services.
Yes.
So that's in the phone book under Social Services?
Right, or Adult Protective Services. It may be listed that way as well.
All right. We have a question. Please warn people what happened to us. But I don't have an answer there, and I don't have a good answer, but there was fraud. So I'm going to go back, and there's another one. Son-in-law renting land from mother and not paying her anything for 7 or so years, so mother was financially struggling. Should they have filed elder abuse?
Well, that depends on if the mother was knowingly allowing the son-in-law to use that land
For free.
Correct.
And so it really is a complicated deal. I would call Social Services.
Yeah.
And let them get involved.
Right.
That's a good question. We have another insurance issue. Dad in assisted living, an insurance agent came to visit him a lot and wasn't fully coherent. The insurance agent kept trying to get money and took a lot from him, and this happens very often. How can it be prevented? Gee, I hadn't heard that. Insurance agent.
Make a report with the state insurance commissioner.
Oh, get a hold of the state insurance.
Right. So insurance is regulated at the state level. So go directly to the South Dakota State Insurance Commissioner's office and contact someone there ASAP.
Okay, we have another comment. Niece had some odd behavior after a stepdad came into her life, was being abused. Eventually was able to tell that she was abused by facial expression and change of personality. Matt? There was a clue.
Yeah, I think as we talked about, you look for those behavioral cues or clues that something is happening, because children just are intimidated or frightened about speaking out. And I think as we're talking about reporting cases, Rick, remember that the onus on us is to report the case. We don't have to be convinced. We don't have to be sure. We don't have to investigate ourselves. We just need to make the report so that the proper authorities can investigate.
Yeah, we don't have to prove it ourselves. If we suspect
right,
it.
and report the suspicion so that it can be investigated.
So you'd call the sheriff or the police department or social services, or do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, with children, you call the Department of Social Services. I think, as Axton said, there is the Department of, well, you just said it, Axton, and I forgot.
Human Services.
Human Services.
Yeah, And actually, as providers, we're required to report suspicions of abuse, whether it's in the elderly or in the children. And so it's something we cover pretty thoroughly in the hospital, in the behavioral hospital, and in our residency training programs.
Yes. We have a note. It's been difficult for me to help my mother manage those financial schemes as she lives in California. I'm here in South Dakota. What I have found to be helpful is to constantly remind her to call me or my brother and just run things by us prior to committing to anything, especially if it's money related. I understand that this may feel like we're taking away her sense of autonomy. However, it's approached in such a way as to provide support and encouragement usually goes over much better. I think it's really important as she gets older and establishes a durable power of attorney who only has her best interests in mind.
Absolutely.
Sometimes when you get a point and you worry about your money, then what you do is you put it over the trust officer and say, I'll have my trust officer send you the check. What's your address? And let the trust officer take the heat. Any final comments, Axton? So much appreciate you being here tonight.
Well, final comments, I would say for those of you who are concerned about your elderly relatives, keep having those conversations. Make sure that they have proper end-of-life planning documents such as powers of attorney and wills. Make sure those things are in order while they can still be in order. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. And now for the winner of tonight's Prairie Doc quiz question. If I witness physical violence of a child while in a convenience store, I should A, tell the store manager, B, ignore, it's none of my business, or C, call the police department? And the answer is C. Call the police department. They can investigate. They can do the heavy lifting. They can intervene if necessary. It was Carol Johnston who answered the question correctly. Thank you, Carol Johnston, for participating, and a book will be in the mail to you soon. We'll be right back after this.
For more than 16 years, the Prairie Doc organization has endeavored to enhance health and diminish suffering by providing useful information based on honest science in a respectful and compassionate manner. Prairie Doc physicians and health professionals continue to answer your questions each week, creating a vast Prairie Doc library of medical information available to you and your family 24 hours a day. Make sure you don't miss a thing. Follow the Prairie Doc on Facebook and YouTube for free and easy access to the entire Prairie Doc library.
The phone rang and I answered it because the call was from a nearby community. No big surprise that the caller was obviously not from anywhere near, and the caller was asking for a donation from some organization in which I had no interest. I said in a kindly tone, "No, thank you," and hung up. They will never end the call. You must hang up. Financial abuse by telephone or internet has been called the crime of the 21st century. People of all ages are at risk, but scammers commonly target the elderly. Those of us past 65 are more often home to answer the phone, are apt to stay on the line longer, are less likely to report a crime, and making all of this worse, telemarketing crime is challenging to prosecute and therefore inviting to criminals. There are plenty of bad guys out there. The National Council on Aging has written a compendium of common fraudulent traps that can result from telephone calls or internet messages. Here's some. Callers may pose as a Medicare representative to obtain your personal numbers for the purpose of billing Medicare for bogus services. Remember, U.S. government agencies will never initiate a call. Because of outrageous prices for drugs, people are lured to purchase less expensive prescriptions from an internet or out-of-country pharmacy. Beware that doses of drugs may be different than desired, and sometimes unsafe substances are added. Callers may be selling false or dangerous anti-aging products and claim reduced wrinkles or bags under the eyes or improved sexual function. Don't trust them. Talk to your doctor. Con artists may promise to split a large sum of money for your help with transporting, but need a good faith donation first. Don't believe it. Hi, Grandma, do you know who this is? Never give out the name of a family member on an unsolicited call. They usually ask the elder patient for fake rescue money. Always check by calling family first. Especially after a major disaster, callers ask for rescue money to help those harmed, which of course goes to the scammers, not the people in need. Fake investment plans are everywhere. Strangers calling or emailing you with a great investment opportunity should not be trusted, especially if it sounds too good to be true. Take-home message. Don't respond to callers or emails from strangers selling or pushing you into something. Don't donate to causes that you didn't initiate. Beware of scammers. In a kindly tone, say, "No, thank you," and just hang up. My producer just told me I need to make a point that it's covered in Chapter 9 of my book, so you want to get the book, and that's an important issue. And a big thank you to our guests, Matt and Axton, for volunteering to join us for this very important topic. We are officially in the grip of flu season, and a second death has been reported in South Dakota. It's not too late to get your flu shot to protect you and those around you. Well, that does it for tonight. From all of us here at On Call with the Prairie Doc, until next time, stay healthy out there, people.
We answer your questions about heart disease, including the latest treatments for heart attack, bypass, stents, heart failure, and more. Changes in treatment of heart disease. Next time, On Call with the Prairie Doc.
Useful, scientific-based medical information delivered in a respectful and compassionate manner. This is what we get from the Prairie Docs. I am proud to serve on the board of the Healing Words Foundation. Our nonprofit organization works behind the scenes building financial support to continue and expand Prairie Doc programs. We thank the many health providers who volunteer their time to answer our health questions. Significant funding is required to produce and distribute video, radio, and print throughout the region. Your donations will help the foundation continue to offer free and easy access to the entire library of Prairie Doc health education programs. I grew up with Rick Holm on the Prairies in Smet. On behalf of the Healing Words Foundation,
And on behalf of a lifelong friend,
we invite you to join our mission. Go to prairiedoc.org and click the donate button today. Thank you.
Major funding for On Call with the Prairie Doc has been provided by
Avera is a proud sponsor of On Call on South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Larson Manufacturing is proud to support On Call Television as it continues to open doors for important medical information.
And by the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, the Medicare Quality Improvement Organization for South Dakota.
and with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions,
Brookings Health System,
Ophthalmology Limited,
American Academy of Family Physicians Foundation, and South Dakota Academy of Family Physicians,
Avera Heart Hospital,
Dakota Allergy and Asthma,
CoBank,
Fishback Financial Corporation.
Vance Thompson Vision,
Urology Specialists,
Brown Clinic,
Black Hills Medical Society,
Aberdeen District Medical Society,
3rd District Medical Society,
7th District Medical Society,
Dakota Bank,
Orthopedic Institute,
Physicians Care Sanford Clinic Community Service Committee,
Aberdeen Asthma and Allergy,
and Swiftel Communications.